Thank you, Peter. I'm a Havertown resident, and I've had solar on my house for 8 years, and I'm currently pursuing not just getting solar on my church at St. Paul's, but also trying to help other congregations to go solar. There are many solutions to reverse climate change that a house of worship can do. And we advocate for doing as many of these things as possible. Installing solar does rank fairly high on the list. Project Drawdown identifies it as the number 10 solution to reverse global warming. So if you're wondering, should we be doing this for good creation care? Yes. How to find out if your house of worship is suitable for solar? The first thing to ask, at least around here, is your roof slate? If it is, and you're not planning on doing any work to it, rooftop solar is probably not your best option. Now, if your house of worship, next question is if your house of worship has an unshaded south-facing roof area. You'll see on the picture, this is a project sunroof picture, in bright yellow, that is an excellent area to put solar panels. The next question is, how old is your roof? You want to have at least a lifetime of 20 years. More is even better before you install solar. So if your roof is coming to the end of its lifetime, you would want to replace it. Project Sunroof, where this image came from on the right-hand side, is provided by Google for free, and it gives you a rough analysis of the solar potential of your building. The images from it are a couple years old, so if you've recently removed a tree or other buildings were built around it, you might have to just keep that in mind. But that will give you a good idea of the areas where that would be good for putting solar panels. Other options besides roof mounted are parking lot canopies. These are add about 35% more to the cost of the project, but can be options for places that can't do the roof mounted. And also you can do ground mounted, and that's about 9% more than roof mounted. Now, if your house of worship is not suitable for any of these things, another great option is choosing to buy renewable energy. And this both supports and expands renewable energy in the US and is good for creation care. A good place to shop for renewable electricity for both commercial and residential is makebenproud.com, and some plans are below PICO rates. Also, the Energy Co-op of Philadelphia is a nonprofit, and they offer renewable electricity as well as renewable natural gas, which is sourced from captured landfill gas, although currently this is more expensive than PICO rates. If you find that your site is good for rooftop solar or the others, the next thing that will happen is you'll probably try to contact an installer. And installers will request electricity bills for the house of worship for a 12-month period. Now, this should be done in a pre-COVID time for when the building is at its regular use. If you have a size of system, or you can put a size of system that would cover 60 to 100% of your usage, you should first increase the energy efficiency of the building. This is so that you don't end up buying a bigger system than you will actually need. And by far the best return on investment in energy is energy efficiency in adding insulations, LEDs, and other methods. For those of you who are not familiar with solar, here's the basic economics. there's really only one output in cost, and that's the initial installed equipment cost. And most of the systems are warranted for 25 years and require no maintenance. The income that you get is the savings of the electricity that is produced by the panels. So you can almost think of this as you're pre-buying your electricity for the life of the system. Also, your income comes from solar renewable energy credits if you choose to take them, and these are sold on the open market. So for a mid-size or smaller commercial system of 30 kilowatts, you would expect around $2,000 a year in income from your savings from electricity. So this is money you wouldn't have had to spend. And then an actual income of about $1,000 a year for the current price of the SRECs. Now, tax benefits are not available to nonprofits, but they can be utilized in some of the methods that we'll show later. The tax benefits for solar include federal income tax credit, which in 2021 will be 22% of the installed cost, and going forward will drop to 10%. I should note, as a plug for Solarize Delco for residential, it dropped to 10% only for companies. For residential, it drops to 0. So if you're thinking of going solar for your residents, under the current rules, this is the year. Also for tax benefits for companies is depreciation. And this is tax bracket dependent, but basically you get whatever your tax bracket is, you basically reduce your taxes by that amount of the system. So 100% of the system times your tax bracket is about what you can depreciate, or that's how much you get back in the taxes. Okay, so what about commercial solar in Pennsylvania? So houses of worship are considered commercial. Some of the challenges in Pennsylvania is we have a comparatively low commercial electricity rate. In addition, electricity rates for commercial can only be offset for about half of what you can offset for residential. And this is due to the way PICO bills. So for residential, you can offset 12 cents per kilowatt hour, but for commercial, only 5.6 cents per kilowatt hour for the current rates. Also, Pennsylvania has fairly low SRECs. So all of these combined makes it a fairly tight way to get the projects done in Pennsylvania. But it can be done, and we're going to show you some ways. So one of the things that also helps is if you have a larger system. So the larger the system, the lower the installed cost per watt. So in the graph on the left here, you see on the y-axis is the system cost per watt, and then you see two columns, a small to mid-range size of 10 to 50 kilowatts, or a larger size of 200 kilowatts. So you'll see that with no tax benefits, just going to a larger system, you're going to see a big reduction in size. Now, with what we can get back in savings for the commercial electricity rates and the low SRECs, at 25 years, you basically have, you can only break even if your system was at $2.49. However, if you consider using those tax benefits, it goes way down for both the size systems. Now here is at 20 years. The reason I say 20 years is because I'll mention a power purchase agreement later, and the length of that time is 20 years usually. So for somebody who would want to invest in your project, they would need a system that is costs less, and they could only possibly make 1 to 4% or 2.9%. So for this reason, a lot of solar developers are not courting Pennsylvania commercial institutions because there's just not that big of a margin. So how can we get these tax benefits so that companies can get the tax benefits so that nonprofits cannot? Again, this is the federal tax credit. If you combine these things, that's, you know, for about 40%, 50% of the cost of the system that you can reduce the price by. I mentioned a power purchase agreement. Before I go into the different ways that you can finance a system, it's important to understand what this is. So this is an agreement between the electricity user at the location of the solar installation and a solar developer, for example, Sunrun or a private LLC. And these two entities sign a contract and it's called a power purchase agreement. And it's usually 20-year contract where the electricity user buys the electricity at a set rate from the solar developer, and they have an option to buy out the contract at the end of year 6. The solar developer owns the system that would be on the user's roof. This is a common option in both commercial and residential properties, but currently traditional solar developers are not offering these for small commercial properties in Pennsylvania. So what are House of Worship's options or other nonprofits' options for getting solar? The easiest option is to just buy the system outright. This involves a large upfront cost, but you get the electricity value and the SREC income. This is also the most expensive. All the other options that are listed here are third-party ownership. That means that the system that would be on your property would be owned by the other party. And that's so that they can make use of the tax benefits. So I think that as far as ease, the top of this list is Collective Sun. They are a company that works directly with nonprofits. As of 2021, the nonprofit pays 90% of the cost up front, and the nonprofit gets the electricity and the SREC income. And then at the end of year 6, the ownership is transferred to the nonprofit. This again is very easy, but it's still expensive. Other partners can be Revolve, which also offers PPAs or solar leases. It's zero money down. They support houses of worship, but I haven't seen them do one in Pennsylvania, although they were working on one recently. Sun Wealth is a great option for underserved nonprofits or churches or houses of worship in low-income communities. Because they are public benefit corporation, in those cases they will take a much smaller percentage and they are able to accept smaller installations. Everybody Solar works with a select group of nonprofits, however at this time has not partnered with a house of worship. Catholic Energies, also Mission Energies, they work with other people than the Catholic Church. They also do PPAs, but have not done any in Pennsylvania for less than 100 kilowatt system. I already talked about a traditional solar developer, because all the ones above this that I just mentioned, they all work specifically with nonprofits. Now, Sun Wealth will do other things as well, but for their public benefit part of the corporation, they work with nonprofits. And then the other option that Noel will be talking more about, and I will set up, is a PPA with a private LLC. So this is zero money down. You agree on electricity payment for the solar array to the LLC, and generally an agreement is reached that the system would be donated at the end of year 20, if not earlier. This is the most economical for House of Worship. However, it is the most complicated. In addition to figuring out a financing option, there are some ways to lower the initial cost of the system. One of these ways is with Solarize, and you've already heard a little bit about this in the intro. So Solarize uses the power of scale to reduce the cost of solar installation. So it's like a group buying program. If you're interested in this for residential or commercial in Delaware County, you can email solarizedelco@gmail.com. Other ways to lower system costs is to partner with a solar installer and kind of create a group buying program within your institution. And again, these can be paired with other third-party ownership options. This is to reduce the cost of the system initially. There have been over 770 congregations in the US that have gone solar. These are spread throughout the country, and we have several in Pennsylvania as well. And they have used many of these different options. They've used Collective Sun, SunWealth, private LLCs that are investment owned. They've used Revolve, and also private LLCs that are nonprofit owned. So if you hear financing with an LLC, it is not a one-size-fits-all type of thing. There are many different ways you can structure a private LLC. The first one is to have a sole proprietor LLC. In this situation, one person sets up an LLC. The owner of that LLC can offset any income. It flows through to the personal taxes. And you'll hear more about that with Temple Lutheran, and they even did a new tweak to it that makes it even better, I think. And next one is a multi-person owned LLC. In this one, there can be many different investors within the LLC that all joint own it. And the members, in this case, can only offset passive income. And this is income from businesses in which they don't materially participate. And it can be also from income such as rental properties. And the third main way to structure a private LLC is to have it nonprofit owned. So a nonprofit can have a for-profit entity that it invests in. And in this case, it would be a nonprofit owned, and then in order to use the tax benefits, they would partner with a tax equity investor. And there are a couple models for this relationship that can be used. So now we're going to talk about two local studies, and I'm going to hand it off to Noel Smith, who's from Temple Lutheran Church in Havertown. And after you hear his presentation on what they've done there, I'll discuss our drive to get solar at St. Paul's in Ardmore.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name's Noel Smith, and as Joey mentioned, I'm with Temple Lutheran Church in Havertown. Just a little bit about myself. I've been in Havertown for much of my life, and I installed solar on my home, or had it installed in 2009. So fairly early adopter of solar on my house, and in the journey that we've been going through, it's Temple Lutheran. Didn't just start this past year. It's something that I proposed back. I was on council, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, and you know, probably naive at the time about church councils, and I did propose, you know, a solar system at the time, not knowing, you know, how to do this the way that we're going to talk about tonight. And so the economics were really hard. You know, it just didn't make sense, and it was a tough sell to go into a congregation and say, hey, you know, let's put this out there and you're going to get a payback in 25 years. And so that was discouraging, but we didn't, you know, we didn't give up. And, you know, we talked about it again a couple of years ago, and more of a commitment to move forward if we could figure it out. And, you know, council is always supportive, but we got to make it work economically. And then this past year, I learned about this, the LLC model, which you know, I kind of like, you know, hit myself in the head. I'm like, well, why didn't I think of that? Wow. So we went forward and did that. I'm going to talk about the mechanics of it in a minute, but I'll just say before, you know, as we were going through this journey, we did do a number of the first things you should do always, which is to reduce your energy usage where you can, so eliminate waste. And we did that by, you know, we swapped out all the lights in the church buildings, and man, that paid for itself in like 18 months. And so we've been reaping the benefits of that for years now. And then we did an energy audit as well. And that, you know, likewise paid for itself within a couple of years, you know, from the changes that we made to do that. So I do recommend, you know, as you do this journey, if you haven't done it already, you know, seek out areas of waste within the building, you know, envelope, and try to resolve those first. That's really important. But let's talk about like how we ended up with a sole proprietor. You know, we learned about this method from the Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, and I was so excited when I found out. And it was this LLC model where you get multiple investors, and you go down the path of you know, the investors installing the system. But then I learned about passive, the passive income requirement, and I was really discouraged. And like, well, how are we going to make this work? Because I really, you know, the time was running out with the incentives. I wanted to make that work, and so did more research. I have an accountant that I recently started using for my personal taxes, and he was really excited about this too. It was pretty funny. I didn't have to pay him for that consulting up front because he got so excited, and he helped me to figure out that, you know, as a sole proprietor, I mean, it's just like owning a landscape business. In this case, you know, I'm a solar company, and it just flows into your 1040 just like any other income or cost. And so that's when I realized, well, we got to make it work this way. So how are we going to make it work as a sole proprietor and raise the money we need to do that? And I'm going to walk through that in a minute. So I did. I founded a company. It's called Holy Solars LLC. It was formed to fund and install this system. And Temple Lutheran Church has agreed to purchase all of the energy produced by the system that we place on their buildings. So that was easy. The system that we ended up with was a 44.2 kilowatt system. That's 136 panels that'll be laid across 4 different roof areas of the building. And you can see the picture of the roof. We were, again, very just blessed and fortunate that, you know, we had enough surface area on our roofs to, you know, you can see kind of the yellow there to get the solar that we needed to do that. And we designed the system to get close to 100%, not quite. You don't kind of want to go over, you want to go kind of close to it. So we were about 95% of the usage, probably between 95 and 98% is the usage. And we'll use net metering with Pico, which is really important because, you know, sometimes the sun, you know, shines more than you need. And so you're basically charging or running your neighbors' houses, and sometimes you need to pull from the grid. And so I call Pico my battery in this case, right? So we're generating about the electricity that we use on an annual basis. We put to the grid when we're making more, and we take from the grid when we need it. So effectively, Pico is my battery. So the net benefit, and when I say net benefit, this is the income that the church will get net over the next 25 years that they wouldn't have gotten had we not done this. And it's about $100,000 net, you know, to the bottom line of Temple Lutheran Church over a 25-year period. So that's significant because we're in the process of repointing all of our buildings right now, and that costs a lot of money. We're paying that over 25 years. And so we just took a fairly large chunk of that cost and just saved it in this project. So really important in that regard, just from the sustainability of the church finances. But more importantly, we reduced our carbon emissions by about 500 tons over 25 years, which is huge. So, and that's really the driver of why we did it is that line right there. It was all about reducing our carbon emissions. My selling point to the church this time, so you remember that when I said the first time I went to Temple Lutheran and pitched it and asked them to put up a whole lot of money to put up a system. Well, this time I asked them for no money. So that kind of made it an easy sell for the church. We are expecting to do the installation in the next 30 days. So really excited about that. We're waiting on a couple of things to happen. First, that flat roof that you see on the building is scheduled to be replaced in the next couple of weeks, and I'm waiting for PECO to finalize the interconnect. So once those are done, which should be by the second week of December, they're going to install these, weather permitting. So let's go to the next slide. So a little bit about the model, as Joey noted, this is a kind of a little bit of a modification of the sole proprietor model. And you can see up on the left, I've got, there's 5 of us in the congregation total that are involved in financing this. There's myself as the Holy Solars sole proprietor, and then I've got 4 families that are providing funds to Holy Solars in terms of a loan. So they're going to loan the money to Holy Solars. And so that's going to bring us to the 100,000 we need of the 5 families. And then, that's how we funded this basically. And there's a power purchase agreement with Temple Lutheran Church to buy all of the energy that we produce. And we have a 10-year agreement, not 20, because because of the way we did it, the finances were so appealing that we can pay for this system in 10 years. And so we have a 10-year power purchase agreement, after which we donate the system to the church. We have a contract with a solar installer that we've signed. It's Lumina Solar. We did it through Solarize Delco. It was the best. It was the best cost. I got 4 bids. I got good pricing. They were very competitive all around. And Lumina was known to us through Solarize and also good pricing. So we were happy with that. The income and loss goes through my taxes. So it's fairly straightforward. My accountant confirmed that for me. So that's cool. Then Temple Lutheran will have a net metering contract with PECO. The way this is designed, Joey talked about the SRX. The SRX they will own. It's just one less piece of paperwork to transfer when we transfer the system, and I included that in the financial model. So I put Solar Systems there. That's the one I use personally. So it could be any aggregator of SRX, but so that's the essential model, and kind of the key for this model is the income and losses are treated just like any other income I have, and so that really gives us the flexibility we needed to make this work. Let's do the next one. All right, so this is a lot of data here. So this is really for your reading when you get the slides, if you get them. But I'll just kind of highlight them for things I maybe didn't talk about. I calculated the value of the solar generated by this 44 kilowatt system, and it comes out to about, you can see the math there, but it comes out to about $6,000 a year of value that it's worth, and that includes the reduction in the PECO charges and the SRX. When you add it all up, it's about 6,000. So I made that the cost in the PPA. It's a fixed cost at $6,000 a year. I carved it out to quarterly payments of $1,500 for 10 years. And so you can see the total cost of Temple Lutheran is 0, is 60 minus 60. So that's kind of when I pitched it to them, it was hard for them to say no. After 10 years, by contract, the system is donated to the church. However, we did put a rider in the contract that Holy Solar, so the 5 families that put into that, will get together and have a glass of wine after year 7 and say, do we want to continue to receive payments from the church, or do we want to just call it? We had a good 7 years and call it even at that point. So that's up to the investors. And over 25 years, we talked about that $100,000 savings and reduce the carbon emissions. The tax flow, so I'm going to talk about how we got the cost down to about 60% of the install cost. So 26% is the federal investment tax credit. That goes to 22 next year for commercial or for all. And then we have asset depreciation offset by income from the church. So I'm going to get like, I'm going to have to pay taxes on the income, right? So you can see I have a contract to receive $60,000 from the church. So I'm going to pay taxes on that. So I'm netting out, I can depreciate $87,000. I'm going to have income of 60. So that delta is really the tax write-off. And so when I add all that up, I came out to approximately $40,000 in tax benefits. And so we're only charging the net of that, which is $60,000. And again, that depends on tax brackets, and you should do your own calculations for that to do it. I came up with about 60 for that. Loan repayment, another key kind of consideration. So when I have the families, the other 4 families, I am paying them 30% of their loan back in the first installment. So in July of next year, the contract states for each one of those, family members that have kind of invested in this, they will get 30% of their loan back right then, and then the rest gets spread over that 10-year period. And the reason I did that is because as the 26% federal investment tax credit, I'm getting my 2020 taxes, and then I'm going to have depreciation that goes into that as well. So I figured I was getting about 30% of the benefit right up top, so giving it right back to the folks that are financing. I gave them $100 interest for every 5,000 loans. So that's about 2% simple interest rate. So like a $10,000 loan gets 10,200 over 10 years. Again, that's predicated on going 10 years. If we opt after year 7 to say, thanks, it was fun, but we don't want to do this paperwork anymore, then that's what's going to occur then too. And that'll be just a write-off at that point. So that's my story. And I'm going to pass it back to Joy.
Thank you, Noel. So as I mentioned, I'm currently pursuing solar at St. Paul's in Ardmore. We are at the point where the church council has recommended a solar installation. And then in February, the congregation is going to vote on if they want to do a solar installation. For us, the financing route has not been chosen yet, and that will happen in the next couple months. We have a unique situation where we have 2 commercial properties and 3 residential properties. And our large commercial property, our sanctuary, is slate. So we are not moving to install on our sanctuary, so we are at the corner, I should say, we're at the corner of Wynwood and Athens. So if you're going up Eagle into Wynwood Road, our church is on the right-hand side and the cemetery is on the left. Where we're proposing solar is the 3 electrified buildings in the cemetery, which are 2 residential properties and a cemetery maintenance building. So those are the properties you see here on the bottom with some solar layouts, and they have good solar potential for all of them. Noel mentioned that he's using Pico kind of as his battery for the net metering, where if you overproduce, the electricity goes to the grid. If you underproduce, you pull from the grid. Pico also offers a virtual net metering, and that's one thing that we would be able to use. So as long as all the buildings are within a 2-mile radius and they're billed to the same entity, we can use electricity from the buildings that have solar on all of our buildings. So we can use electricity from the buildings over in the cemetery across the street with the parsonage and with our main sanctuary building. So this is a fairly unique situation that we're basically able to use both commercial and residential rates for electricity. One of the financing options that we are considering is using collective sun. So I mentioned this previously. Basically what they offer is they call it a solar discount. So in 2021, you only pay 90% of the installed cost. They cover the other 10%. So for the financing or the cost benefit, this reduces the cost you see in the orange in the slides on the graph, but you don't really utilize the majority of the tax benefit that you could be utilizing if you were to set up something such as Noel has proposed and is doing. However, this is a very easy way to go about it. There's just one contract that you sign, one with Collective Sun, and Collective Sun signs it with the installer that you have chosen. So the three options that we are considering are the church just buying the system outright, using Collective Sun to get some of the tax benefits, or pursuing a sole proprietor LLC. For us, we have no identified owner or formation of an LLC at this point, but we've made some assumptions as far as the costs involved. So for these three options, I labeled my thing wrong. So here on the right-hand side, I have 25-year cash flow. What I mean to say in this column is this is what we have right now. This is a mix of residential and commercial properties. So in all cases at 25 years, we will be ahead. Now, if we only had commercial properties, only with the sole proprietor LLC would we be in the positive. So again, I mixed up the labels on these two different columns. So if only the commercial properties, we'd be negative for the church buying outright and Collective Sun, and positive only for the LLC, the sole proprietor LLC. Now, one of the things that makes our system a little bit more expensive is because we are installing in 3 different buildings, and this might require 3 different interconnections with PECO. One of the things that I've found is that figuring out how to finance it is one issue, and then also communicating it with a congregation is another. Noel was able to come to his church council and say basically 0 down. We have not been able to do that. So how to sell it and to really show that, you know, this is the right thing to do. So I have a couple of examples here where of communication that I've used with St. Paul's, and I have many others that if you are looking to do creation care things at your church or synagogue or other house of worship, I'd be happy to share. So for us, creation care is at the top of the list why we are doing this. Another thing is our installations will be visible to all the people going by on Wynwood Road, and then it should set a good example for the community, and it also provides financial benefits. And why should St. Paul's care about climate change at all? How is caring about climate change related to our faith? So here I talked about how we're already committed to helping people in need, and then that need is going to be multiplied and is already being multiplied by climate change. So if we don't address this multiplier of the need, we're going to be behind. So basically it's doing solar and all these other mitigation efforts of our carbon footprints as faith communities are kind of like doing preventative maintenance for our world. I want to add a third case study in here. You might remember I said there's a couple different ways that you can set up or form an LLC or structure an LLC. One is the sole proprietor. This is the way that most congregations, if they use an LLC, do it, is with the sole proprietor. Noel's version with the added loans is the first time I've seen that. And then another one is a multi-person. There's not as many people that do that because of the passive income requirement. And then this third way is when the nonprofit or the house of worship actually forms the LLC, and then they work with a tax equity investor. And that's what this third case study is. And if you are in the place to be a tax equity investor, this might pique your interest. One of the issues with a house of worship finding a tax equity investor is you can't advertise for one. So generally what houses of worship do is they find them through an accounting firm or another kind of middle arrangement. But this is an example where this Englewood church in Indiana, they were going to be eligible for, let's see, they needed a capital of around $52,000. The church was putting in around $40,000 and the investor was putting around $13,000. The way they structured the relationship is that the investor, since the church could not get the tax benefits, would reap the tax benefits of the whole, almost 99% of the entire benefits for the entire project. So in this case, the investor put in around $13,000 and actually got $15,000 in tax benefits. So this is quite amazing that this can be done. So there's different ways in which you can use creative financing to be able to get solar when the margins are tight, such as in Pennsylvania. So if your house of worship does go solar, please maximize the creation care. Send out press releases. Really work within your congregation to somehow multiply the effect of putting the solar panels on. Everybody in the congregation, in my view, should be able to say why you did it and why it relates to your faith. In addition to just why we did it, you can go continually in doing education. You can provide visuals. Look, this is what our solar system is producing. This is some data from my personal solar system, where you can look at what the panels are doing on almost a minute by minute basis. You can look at the average throughout the year. Generally, this is just a cloud detector, but it's pretty cool to see. This video, unfortunately, you're not going to get the good sound for it, but the point of it is this a guy from Will Grant from Project Drawdown, and his point is that the environmental movement has generally focused on, if you mitigate your contributions as a person, so you might use your own bags at the grocery store, you can compost, you can have a solar installation at your house. And then the other thing is that you could sign a petition or you could advocate for changes in government. But what's often missed is what he calls the level 3 change, where you can influence a lot of people locally. So if one of the things that he mentions is that if you can go after a solar installation. He gives the example of at your school, but say it is at your house of worship, that the process of going through that and talking with people within your congregation can be just as important as getting the solar installation done. So basically, you are possibly changing people's minds. You are getting you're basically multiplying the effect that you can do as a single person in what your carbon footprint is. So I really see churches and synagogues and other houses of worship as really to be leaders in focusing and reducing um, effects on climate change. We care about what happens because of climate change. Let's try to stop those effects. So that is all that I have right now. And I have my, one of the things I became this year is a creation care ambassador. So I give talks to different congregations relating creation care to faith. I'd be happy to do that for any of your congregations. My email is my name, joybaxter@gmail.com. And Noel Smith, do you want to talk, Noel?
Yeah, so if folks want to reach out to me as well, my contact info is listed there, noel.smith.jr@gmail.com. And, thanks for your time tonight, and looking forward to some great questions.
No, this is Peter. I don't see any questions in the question window, but I had one rolling back to your slide. I had a question about if you could just explain what demand charges are. So churches
Yeah.
pay at I guess, a lower per kilowatt hour rate than residences. They're considered commercial, but they also pay something called demand charges.
Yeah.
If you could explain that a little bit.
Yeah, the demand charge was basically because for commercial property, we have a higher demand for energy. The infrastructure that PECO puts in place is there to support whatever demand we need whenever we want it. So it's really like, so they have to build for this peak that we only use periodically. And that's what we're paying for. And so it's that demand charge. And specifically what the demand charge is, it's the peak charge over a 15-minute period during the month. And so, you might be having a really low use month, and then I actually, when I analyzed the electric bill for 2019, I saw this like the peak charge for August was just insane. And I went back to figure out what caused that. Well, it was the week that we did the month that we did VBS. And so the way that we run our church is we have a daycare, which is our primary use of peak energy during the week and during peak hours, right? So it's fairly consistent, time. And, it's high in the summer with air conditioning, but in August, it was a really hot week. And then we had the air conditioning on in the sanctuary during the week at the same time the daycare was using their peak usage. So when you double them up, our peak usage for that month went really high, and it was kind of like it jumped off the chart at me. And so PECO had the infrastructure in there to support us, and so we have to pay for that. And so, it probably cost us an extra $100 that month or $150 to have VBS just in the peak charge alone, not the energy use, just the peak charge to have that infrastructure in place to do that. So bottom line is it's the peak 15-minute usage during the billing period. Mm-hmm.
So, and that's typical, I guess, that air conditioning hot day time load is one of the, for the profile of the Lutheran Church, that's the typical peak. And the good thing about solar is that by nature, it's also peaking at the same time. So that's why you're getting such a good bump, presumably, in terms of the projected decrease in demand charges.
Well, that's actually, yeah, I mean, that helps. Yeah, absolutely. Solar, so for our profile at Temple Lutheran, our peak solar is in fact when we're peaking out in the energy usage, because we're basically running as a, the daycare is running at business hour. So, another church might have different profile for usage and their demand peak might be at a different time, but for ours that was there. But you can just imagine one cloudy afternoon kind of scuttles our whole plan. So that's why you don't get full back. So my peak, my demand charges are about the same as my usage charges. So at $800 is, I still got another $3,000 I'm paying. So, or no, probably 20, well, not 3,000, not probably 2,000. There's probably about $2,000 left of that demand charge that's not getting reduced to zero, even though I'm replacing effectively all of the energy used over the year. In a residential, that would net out to zero. In a commercial, it does not, because of that demand charge reduction. So, but the RECs, the solar energy credits, make up for most of that.
Okay, somebody did ask if the slides will be made available. We will. We could probably just email a PDF to everyone. Let's see. There's a complicated question from Joseph Klinger. With the setup of LLC and loans, are there safeguards in place that if members who founded the LLC or loaned the money would have an issue with the congregation or a falling out, they can't blow up the whole situation?
Well, yeah,
Well, that's a loaded question.
I'll answer that in this way. I mean, we did account for, the unintended consequences, unintended events happening in terms of deaths and what have you, but it's a contract. So, you can fall out with the congregation, that contract still holds basically. So yeah, it's a legal contract. So whether you're in the congregation or not, that contract is a legal entity. So, but I will say some of the things that we put in there around, some of the folks that are funding this are retired, so they're not young. I'm not that young myself. And so I did put a clause in there to say, let's say lender one passed away in year 2 of the loan, and it's a 10-year loan. Well, I don't want their family to have to worry about this for the next 8 years, getting a payment from the LLC, because they're trying to close an estate and what have you, right? So I have a rider in there to pay off their loan within, I know, a period of time, 6 months or something from that date, just to let the family not have to, worry about that. So that's the rider. The other one is, as a sole proprietor, if I passed away, my wife would take over. So I have that, kind of continuity. What if we both passed away? At that point, the whole thing ends, and we just pay everyone back, and the church gets the system. So we put that in there as well because we won't need our money anymore. So that's how we decided to handle that. So
okay, that's a good answer, and yeah, it is a legal contract, right? And if you notice in the details, they're basically not profiting from it. The loan is pretty nominal. It's probably negative relative to inflation. Everyone is really doing it for other reasons.
There's a lot of trust between the members. The folks that are doing this have known each other for 10 years or more, and many of them for longer than that. So there's kind of already this implicit trust that existed. So that kind of made the contract kind of, it was necessary, but the trust was so deep and long. So yeah.
Yeah, but the contract is really necessary in any event. So that's really everyone's protection. Everyone is held to the contract such as it's written. So I guess I don't see any more questions. And I wonder.
There's one more question here. Someone had asked if a church has oil heat, is solar still an option?
Well, what we're talking about essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, is solar, electric, or photovoltaic. So using solar to replace the electric, all of the electric power provided by the utility. And I believe both of these churches and the respective facilities probably have other heating.
Yeah,
Correct?
we have gas heaters. So.
And we also
Yes.
have gas. Yeah.
Yeah. So the answer is it is the basic assumption of both of these case histories or case histories in progress, if you will, that it's not replacing the heating system. That is, long term, I think as a solution for climate change is the more complicated question going forward for churches and residences and businesses is most of our heating is fossil fuel based, and so then what do you do about that? And you can buy, I think as Joy mentioned in earlier in her slides, you can buy renewable natural gas, for example. For that matter, biodiesel, which is essentially number 2 fuel oil, is also commercially available. I don't know if anyone is marketing it much, but Joy mentioned one provider of renewable gas. I actually purchased renewable gas from Green Mountain Energy, and I think there are some other sellers as well. I think we can open the floor to the phones if anyone wants to pipe in and ask anything. But I also wanted to ask the both Noel and Joy to expound a little bit about on the path to. My understanding is it took Noel a little bit of research going from the prior presentation that he attended to realizing that certain things don't work from a tax perspective that he thought he thought was going to work, which is if you could just go over that path a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and unmute people. Sorry, Noel, I inadvertently muted you.
I couldn't unmute. I was like, oh no.
Sorry.
The original presentation that I got from another group in Michigan talked about the LLC model with group members forming an LLC. And, it wasn't clear to me on their presentation that it was just passive income, or maybe they did say that, and I honestly didn't understand what passive income was and wasn't. So then I had to go do all that research about, what passive income is, and I realized, well, I don't have any passive income, and neither do any of the folks that I'm talking about this with. So it was really, I was kind of like, well, that's dad. And so I talked to my accountant and tried to figure out and did my own research about, how can we make this work? And realizing that, as a sole proprietor, it's no longer passive income. It's, I guess, ordinary income at that point. I was like, well, it flows through nicely as a sole proprietor. And so and I confirmed it with my tax accountant who modeled it for me, with and without, and so confirmed it. And so I was like, cool, that works. And now, we needed to figure out the funding with the loans, and that was fairly straightforward, honestly. It was really the complexity was the LLC setup and, how to do it in terms, so that you ensured that the tax benefits would flow. And as a sole proprietor, it's actually fairly straightforward. It flows nicely to your 1040. So that's how I ended up doing it. Yeah. And I was in a weird year for me personally. I had sold some stock, and so it was like, I have some tax obligation for these gains. So it was the year for me to do this. So that's why I became so aggressive in ensuring that we got it done this year. So
She must have had a communication issue. But one of the options that Joy outlined was a little bit of a surprise to me, and that was the option of let's see if I could find it. Oh, the partner with a tax equity investor. So that option apparently provides some very lucrative tax breaks for the equity investor, and that seems like something that this one right here, this case study of Englewood Church in Indianapolis. It just this was a little bit eye-opening to me, and I think you know, Noel, I don't know if you want to evaluate this a little bit further yourself, but you know, this seems like something that a socially responsible equity investor would probably be willing to, you know, pay for much more of the system and not take such a high rate of return, and maybe be able to facilitate solar on houses of worship in a big way. I certainly would like to learn a little bit more about the ins and outs of this with regard to tax. So I think this deserves a little bit more study. And I personally would be interested in being an investor on a basis of, you know, socially responsible, not necessarily quite as lucrative a return on investment. So maybe we'll do a little bit more research on that and return to that issue at some later date. Okay, great job presenting. We're going to email the presentation. Anybody who's attending who is interested in getting help with explaining all of this and making decisions in their congregation, temple, synagogue, you have the email contacts, and we'll be sending it around in the presentation. Either Noel or Joy would be happy to facilitate that. We're hoping to get a little bit of photo documentation, maybe video documentation of the Lutheran Church installation in December, and we'll certainly share that with you as well. Thank you all for your interest, and hopefully you can all take away the information and talk to your respective houses of worship, and we certainly look forward to hearing back from you if you need help. Thank you very much, and have a good night.